So for this wonderfully special season finale of the podcast, I couldn't think of a more apropos guest. I'm actually rather sort of humbled and shocked and delighted to have landed him. He's someone who really requires no introduction, but what the heck, I'm going to go for it anyway. Mr. Mark Millar is the New York Times best-selling author of Wanted, Kick-Ass, and Kingsman, The Secret Service, all of which have been adapted into successful films. He also wrote Old Man Logan, which inspired my favorite film of this year, Logan. And he wrote Civil War, which is Marvel's biggest-selling graphic novel of all time and the inspiration for Captain America Civil War. His 2002 book, The Ultimates, has been described as the blueprint for the Marvel Cinematic Universe as we know it. It is an honor and a pleasure to bring onto the Fanboy Podcast Mr. Mark Millar. How are you, Mark?
Very good. Thanks for having me. I'm very slightly hungover from I've got children and I like going out drinking at the weekend, and it's a terrible combination. So the kids got me up at 6 o'clock with a hangover this morning.
Oh my goodness! Trust me, I feel your pain. I know exactly what that's like. I've got two little ones myself. But I'm glad you're here with me anyway, despite the hangover. Hopefully you're drinking lots of water.
Do you know, it's a deadly combination, a hangover and a Scottish accent, because nobody's going to understand a word of this podcast.
I think somehow we shall weather on. I feel like you must be having a hangover from just this year you've been having. I mean, 2017 has been pretty nuts. You know, you got to see some of, the seeds of your Old Man Logan book grow into a, very sort of unique and groundbreaking film by James Mangold, Logan earlier this year. There was Kingsman, The Golden Circle, which came out. And, that's a sequel to, Kingsman, The Secret Service, a film I absolutely loved. There's been movement on a Starlight movie, possibly, which would star Sylvester Stallone, which I'd love to ask you about. And then, there's the biggest news of all, your Millar World production house was bought up by Netflix. So, I mean, who's had a better 2017 than you?
Do you know what's funny? Netflix has eclipsed everything for me. It's just taken up my entire year. It's so exciting, and the build up to it was, we were obviously months and months in negotiation, and the sale was a big deal and everything. All the other stuff I hadn't even really thought about. I would get a call saying, "Oh yeah, the Kingsman premieres in 3 days' time," and then I missed it. And which is ridiculous, but it was just such an exciting year that lots of really cool things were happening, and I almost didn't get a chance to stop and smell the roses,
Yeah.
So so there was 2 empty seats beside Colin Firth, at the Kingsman premiere, and I was kind of mad, but I did catch it later.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you kind of had a bit of a stacked plate this year, so I hope they forgave you for missing the premiere.
I was actually just going to give them to 2 random pals because, I just thought they could probably just pretend they were me as long as they're Scottish, they'd be all right, Better not.
Yeah, of course. Maybe they could use a little CG and just kind of put you in there somehow too for photos, maybe. But yeah, let's talk about the Millar World Netflix thing. I mean, that's pretty huge, and I know as of now you've already got the Magic Order lined up for next year. Are there any plans for like TV series or original films, for Netflix as of yet?
Oh my God, yeah, that's all we've been doing this year. Magic Order, I've finished season 1 now. It's completely done, and we're starting to put things together on that. I mean, it's one of those things where now I'm so ingrained in at Netflix. I work at Netflix now. My wife and I both run the Millar World division within Netflix.
Yeah.
That I'm sworn to secrecy. I'm suddenly no longer interesting because I can't see all the stuff I'd normally spill the beans on.
Yeah.
But we're sort of done. I finished a few months ago. Actually, finished up Magic Order. And I've moved on to a second project, which I'm actually just finishing this Wednesday, just for Christmas. And then I'm starting a third project, which people don't know about yet, in the second week in January. So we're well ahead. I mean, we're kind of about a project and a half ahead of the announcements.
Wow.
So that by the time something's announced, I've kind of done it by that point, and it's on to showrunners and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah. Now, can you explain just a little bit about like the medium you'll be tackling? Because Magic Order is going to be a book series, right?
Yes, well, what we're doing is it's actually been created as a television show, but part of my deal at Netflix was that I wanted to keep doing comics because I love doing comics.
Yeah.
So what they did when they bought Millar World was they basically bought everything. They bought our entire company, everything, everybody who worked for Millar World, and they bought out all of us, all the people who owns the creators, who owned the copyright on everything. So the artists and myself, we all got bought out. And part of the deal also was, me coming on and working at Netflix too, So what I'm doing is I'm finishing some projects, like writing volumes 2, volumes 3, all that kind of thing. But at the same time, also creating a lot of new stuff as well. So I probably have about half of each. And because I love doing comics, I just said, look, can I do these as comics too? And they were like, cool, that's great, as long as you're happy. So I've done the Magic Order comic, and life's kind of like as it was before in that sense. It's going to be a nice combo of movies and comics, but the content actually that you're going to see on screen, whether it's as a television show or as a movie, will be ramped up enormously because Netflix are so beautifully ambitious. A studio maybe brings out 10, 14 projects a year. Netflix, there's 1,000 hours of original material next year.
Yeah, I mean, the rumor has it that they're, I think they're spending around $8 billion on original content for this year. So yeah, they're definitely investing hardcore and creating a ton of content.
It feels kind of like Hollywood in the 20s. It's got that feel where, there's just a bunch of people excited sitting around the table saying, yeah, let's do this, and it doesn't feel like, that horrible long development process that people have at studios.
That seems to
and everybody's trying not to get fired at the studios and everything. What I love about the Netflix guys is, studios try not to make a movie because when a movie comes out and loses money, they get fired,
Yeah.
And what I kind of love about Netflix is it's like a bunch of crazy entrepreneurs. Like every single person who works at the company is a risk taker. So everybody's like, let's try this, and, this is almost like they're daring themselves to get fired. I love it because it feels... I always say it feels the way a studio must have felt in 1925. It's like it feels like they're just making up the rules as they go along in the best possible way.
Yeah, it really seems like from everything I've read and from others who have worked there, it always kind of seems like as long as they buy into you, as long as they believe in your vision, that's all they kind of need to do. They will then put themselves behind you 110%, give you the resources you need, and you're off and running. There doesn't seem to be a lot of the red tape and bureaucracies, and we have to focus group everything and everything. It just seems like as long as they believe in what you're bringing to the table, you're golden.
Yeah. But this sounds like I'm drinking the Kool-Aid now and everything, but it really is. It's like that. Like the way it works at studios tends to be, they buy 20, 30 properties for every one thing they make. And everybody agonizes over things, and there's all these rewrites get done, and things just end up, not the way directors want them quite a lot. But Netflix is kind of like, their big thing is they really think about who they want to buy, who they want to hire, and then they just let them run with it. They just think, well, if we've hired you, it's kind of the way Marvel was in the early days as well. Kind of the sort of 10 years I was at Marvel, they used to be like that, where they hire you and then trust you, and if you fail, they get rid of you. And I kind of like that, I like the idea that they trust the creative people. And I think that's what's really exciting a lot of the directors and screenwriters and actors in as well, because it feels, it's our natural instinct, I think, to take risks as creatives, and Netflix is the perfect environment for it. I must admit, this is my first actual job. I've avoided working my entire life, and I'm actually loving it. I'm having a great time.
Wow, yeah, I bet it sounds like it. Now, look, I'm actually glad you brought up, what it's like with these big studios, and I'm glad you brought up Marvel, because I wanted to ask you. Last week's big news was the acquisition of Disney getting Fox, and what this means for Marvel and the cinematic universe. And you had a very interesting take on it, over on the Twitter. And I was just wondering if we could expand on that a little bit. So, it sounds like you're a little anxious about what this means, huh?
I'm not anxious at all, actually. No, I'm eating popcorn, watching chaos, which I love. I've zero anxiety. I love a drama. But I can see a lot of downsides, and I can't see much in the way of upsides. To me, seeing Reed Richards standing beside Tony Stark, isn't good enough. It's like, that's not that exciting to me. I can enjoy those two characters existing, in separate movies. I don't need to see them together that much that I'd be prepared to see one of the big six studios go down, essentially. And I just think, as a writer, I love playing studios off one another. I don't do it now because I'm at one place, but when I was freelance, it's great, if you can go to Disney and say, listen, Fox are going to pay this for this, then it's fantastic, for creative people. It's good to have as many possible outlets as possible. So to see them all start to form into super conglomerates and everything, I just don't think it's a healthy thing. And I also, like I say, I feel as if from an audience point of view, something actually becomes very difficult to understand if we get too many characters all crossing over with each other. I think part of the success of what made Marvel work in the previous decade, the sort of building blocks of what we have now, was the accessibility of it all. Whereas if everything starts to look like a comic book crossover, that's how the comic book industry collapsed in the 90s, and how Marvel's not been doing so well over the last few years in publishing terms either, because mainstream audiences feel alienated when they don't understand what's going on. So as much as fans, people like me who've read comics all their lives, it is cool, to see 40 characters on screen. Yeah. If you're a newbie to this, it's kind of baffling to you. So I don't really see a massive strength in having everything all sort of mashed up like this. I think there was a definite strength to having them spread out. And I'm utterly convinced that will mean less movies and also less chances as well, because Disney have a huge slate now. They've got a lot of stuff to get out there. If they had Fantastic Four 10 years ago, would they have started thinking about a Guardians of the Galaxy movie?
Yeah, that's a great point.
Doctor Strange would probably have been unthinkable if they had their hands on Wolverine, Yeah. So I just think we were probably very well served having these things scattered around the studios like that. But, I'm sure it's going to work. These guys are smart, Feige's done a really good job so far. But I don't know, maybe this is the beginning of them peaking. I don't know. I mean, everything has a natural end, but I do think we're some years off it yet, because I think they're going to be replenished before they peak. I think the X-Men has always struggled to get over the 500 million in terms of box office. Yeah. But in terms of all those X-Men movies, when you look at all 9 of them, but I think Marvel could probably take them towards the billion. I think they would play it very, very well, and it'd be very exciting to see who the new Wolverine is and so on, and to see Fantastic Four done well. Yeah. Will be nice. But I don't know. I mean, in the 2020s, can they sustain it? Will it become more of a fan thing? I don't know. But the big thing for me is seeing people I like at Fox losing their jobs, and I can't see how that can be avoided when you merge two companies. I think it's going to be like a takeover.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me ask you, since you brought up like X-Men and getting to see them perhaps sort of done right. So it seems like you already answered this, but just to be clear, in terms of incorporating them into things, like how would you like to see them handle it? Would you like to see them reboot the property, or would you like to see them somehow integrate the current form, like with McAvoy and Fassbender and all that, somehow integrate them, or just reboot it and start from fresh?
Well, I wouldn't say X-Men's been done wrong, actually. I think X-Men's been done very well. It was Fantastic Four, I think, can be done right. But the X-Men, I would say at least half of those movies have been excellent. I love X1, I love X2, X-Men First Class, Days of Future Past. Yeah. Two of the Wolverine movies have been very good as well. But in terms of how they would reboot, I think Spider-Man Homecoming is a very good template, because you didn't feel bored, you didn't feel you were seeing Uncle Ben getting shot again, which I was kind of worried about. I just thought, we can't see that origin all over again. And they did it very well. They made it a very soft reboot. You knew it was something different, but it felt very fresh, but there wasn't a lot of catching up as well. Yeah. So I'd imagine they'd go the same way. I'd imagine World War II, Magneto's story in World War II is probably going to have to change as well, because it's now so long ago. We're talking 20 years since Ian McKellen had those scenes. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if they're going to update this stuff, but I mean, I'm entirely speculating, just like everybody else. I'm not sure how they'll do it, but I know that one of the side effects will be, I think their box office will go up. If they want to get more money, they put Robert Downey Jr. beside these characters, and that's what's going to happen here. Like Captain America went over the billion by putting Robert Downey Jr. in it. Spider-Man hit 850 with Robert Downey Jr. And I'm sure Robert Downey Jr. is going to be facing off against Magneto at some point.
Oh man, that would be interesting. Yeah. So now I'm going to totally shift gears, because I know I've got you on a bit of a time crunch, and there's so many different topics I want to cover, and I actually want to get to Star Wars in a few. But before we do, I have to touch on something, because I am a gigantic Superman nerd. Oh, great. And I remember that in 2008, there was like a famous pitch you made where you went to Warner Brothers and you pitched a Superman trilogy alongside Matthew Vaughn. Is that correct?
Well, no, we didn't actually pitch it. What it was Matthew phoned me up and he said to me, "Did you not have a Superman idea?" And I was like, I love Superman. I've got a million Superman ideas. And he said, "Would you be interested in coming in and sort of like telling that idea to Warner Brothers?" He said, because Kick-Ass, I think, around that time, I can't remember if we'd started filming Kick-Ass or it had been finished, but Matthew and I had a good relationship going and we knew we were going to work together for a long time. And Matthew said to me, I remember you telling me in the pub you had this idea for a sort of 3-picture Superman thing. And I was like, yeah. But nobody ever heard it. I told Matthew a little bit of it and Matthew loved it. And then he said to Warner Brothers, "Listen, would you be interested in bringing Mark Millar in?" And they said, "Not really, no." and what was they said, "He's a Marvel guy, like he's under contract at Marvel. There's no way we're going to disrespect our own people, by bringing in a Marvel guy." And I said to Matthew, "Look, that's fair enough. I understand,
Yeah.
But, Matthew and I talked about it, and like the idea I told him was a Superman picture that it began at the beginning of time and it ended at the end of time. And it was going to be Superman's story, his life story, starting with the formation of like the Council on Krypton and everything way back, and like running to Superman's death, which would be obviously whenever the stars go out, because by that point
he would essentially be like the last living being on Earth.
Yes,
he would outlive everyone, so it would be like a sort of tragic ending.
Story, yeah. I'm sure somebody at DC will swipe me now on this, but like, it was essentially that story. But I had a gigantic trilogy of stories in amongst it all that had dark side in it and everything. It was a big 3-picture thing, and I wanted to
like it, yeah.
Well, do something that felt a bit like The Godfather for Superman. Something that starts with like young Michael Corleone and then you eventually see him die as an old man. I wanted to do something that covered everything, and it was everything I wanted to say about Superman, but it never happens, and we did other stuff instead. But it's always there in back in my mind. I mean, I'm going to be busy for the next few years, but at some point I'll maybe do it as a graphic novel. Just maybe Frank Whiteley and I, or Brian Hitch and I, or something. We'll maybe get together and do it as a graphic novel or something.
I would love that. Yeah, please do.
I love it. Superman. He's my favorite character. It's I mean, as a kid, everybody else their heroes used to be footballers and things like that, and like my hero was Superman, so like, I don't know how I didn't get beaten up every day, but I've always loved Superman.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. It's funny because I guess, things are always like a game of telephone where, you hear something and then it morphs into something bigger by the time it reaches, the press, because it was always sort of presented as, Miller pitched this movie to Warner Brothers. So it never actually made it that far, huh? You spoke to Matthew about
I've never
it,
made
that
a
was
pitch
it.
in my life. I've always thought, I remember hearing from friends, "Oh my God, it's so humiliating going in and doing a pitch." And I just always thought it's a bit like, it's too needy for me, like, I don't know. I think I'd be too embarrassed to actually sit in there and pitch somebody. I think, look, if you want me to do this, just hire me to do it. It's like, I think going in and actually trying to convince somebody, it's a bit like begging someone to go on a date with you. So I never really fancied it, So, I mean, honestly, it's funny because I've seen so many variations of this report, and some people said, "Oh yeah, Warner Brothers hated Miller's take and all that." It's like they never heard anything. They just said, "Would you like to work?" And then other people said to me, "Yeah, I read Mark Miller's synopsis. It's terrible." And then other people said, "It's the best thing he's ever done. It's a shame it never happened." And nothing is written down. There's like literally nothing.
Yeah, wow. Well, now I'm really hoping you get around to making that graphic novel. But now, so as for it could be cool. So I hope someone listening makes that happen. But listen. In terms of now, because your mate, Matthew, is a few months ago he kind of popped back up on like the Superman radar and kind of revealed that he was having some conversations with Warner Brothers again about Superman possibly doing Man of Steel 2, the follow up. Have you heard anything about that? Would you be willing to kind of let us know?
Well,
I think any updates there?
I mean, there's 10 guys, who are at the top of everyone's list. It's like the normal thing, like I would say guys actually. I mean guys in the kind of broad sense, women obviously, But it's like there's 10 directors who everybody's chasing at any one time, and they'll talk about them for a Star Wars movie, they'll talk about them for a Marvel movie. I mean, Matthew's approach for everything. So Superman was one of those things, and he and I are massive Superman fans. I mean, we worship Richard Donner. We love the Christopher Reeve movies. We're both about the same age, into all the same stuff. Yeah. So he actually phoned me up a few months ago and he said, "Hey, listen, DC, they're very interested in me doing Man of Steel 2. Do you want to come in and do this?" And I was like, I'm exclusive to Netflix for years that we can't even have that conversation. And he was like, oh man, what's the chances of this, So then it kind of drifted away, and he's attached himself to a couple of things and all that, So it's one of those things that may, I mean, if somebody phones Matthew up and offers him enough money, it could all change tomorrow.
Yeah. Do you think he would consider trying to incorporate some of those ideas that you had discussed 10 years ago, or probably go someplace different?
He doesn't know enough of them. He actually just remembers little bits of it, so because that would be my worry, but but he doesn't really remember much, except I told him one thing. And he remembered that. But I mean, the whole broad thing. I mean, I've got stuff handwritten that I've had down for years, just in a big folder. I've got this just Superman ideas. I've got all these folders all over the house. Like, I've got like Green Arrow ideas. I've got like Green Lantern ideas and things. I've got like obscure stuff, that you even have heard of ideas. And the stuff's just all lying there. And at some point in the future, I'll write them. And I've got a gigantic Superman folder, like I say, but nothing's ever been typed up. So nobody really knows what my plans are, so nobody can swipe me.
Okay, all right, because it's funny because he did say, like you mentioned being Donner fans, and because he addressed that back in September, saying that like he would almost want to make like a modern version of the Donner Superman, and he wants it to be colorful and heroic and very quote unquote feel good. And then when I thought about that juxtaposed with your very sort of dark sounding trilogy, I'm like, I wonder which way he's going to go with it.
Oh no, my thing absolutely wasn't dark. Sorry, I mean this is why I'd be terrible in a pitch meeting, because that does sound dark, the death of Superman. Yeah, but it was actually a massive, uplifting, hopeful thing. Like every single minute of it, you were going to feel amazing, because there's no point doing Superman unless you feel good. Like you should walk out of Superman just feeling like $1 million. You should feel great after a Superman film. So the way it was going to be was just the end of time. You don't see Superman die or anything. It was just going to be that was the end. As the stars are going out. But the movie itself was just going to be a big, vast, fun epic. But Superman's got to be a laugh as well. I mean, I feel like the movies were so charming, and that's the tone I would absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like what you just said should have been part of the pitch. Like if you ever get to do it, just go in and say, "Listen, every minute of it, you're going to feel amazing," and that's all. That's all they need to hear. Okay, so look, I know I've got you for limited time now. I took that Superman detour. I wanted to talk Star Wars with you. I know everyone always tries to pick your brain about your books and your movies, and I want to give you a chance to just vent about something as a fan. So you've seen The Last Jedi. I've seen The Last Jedi. We're allowed to go into spoilers here now that we're after opening weekend. So what did you think of Star Wars: The Last Jedi?
I loved it, and I hate to show off. I mean, this is like one of these horrific Hollywood's conversations, but like I went with Mark Hamill. He and I were sitting together watching the movie at the premiere in London, and I had to. I'd have squeezed that into the conversation even if you hadn't asked me, But like, But it was. Your enjoyment is actually like increased 10,000 times if you're sitting with Luke Skywalker.
I would say so, yeah.
I mean, it genuinely was one of the best nights ever. And Mark and I are good friends. We've known each other quite a few years now. And like, he was in Kingsman, and we became really pally a couple of years before that. I never go to LA without going for a drink with Mark, really,
Yeah.
But he had us at Force Awakens, and I loved it. I mean, it was just such a great experience. I was sitting with Carrie Fisher, Harrison Ford, and Mark Hamill. It was like insane watching Star Wars like that.
Unbelievable.
And I almost couldn't concentrate in the movie because I was so excited, like genuinely just loving it,
Yeah.
But like, but I think I preferred this actually, because for me it was always Luke, and because Mark's a pal, but nevertheless, even just Luke was my first hero, like even before Superman, 1977, I saw Star Wars when I was 7.
Yeah.
And I dressed up as Luke Skywalker. I didn't dress up as Han Solo. I dressed up as Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
I helped pictures of Luke Skywalker. I had posters everywhere. So to see him with R2 and him with 3PO and a little bit with Yoda and everything, this felt like Star Wars to me again. And seeing Mark's face so big on that poster, I was really happy. It was a great night. And it was a free bar after it. It was amazing.
Well, and then that never hurts. So just in terms of the film itself, so you enjoyed it more than The Force Awakens?
Yeah, I think I did. Like, they were both good though. It's funny. Like I've only seen The Force Awakens once.
Yeah.
And then I watched it with the kids again at the weekend. Like my 6-year-old hadn't seen it. She was always a little scared of it actually. Although she loves sci-fi and she loves superheroes. But like she was never that keen because aliens look a little bit like monsters, Yeah. But I stuck it on for her, and I think having a female lead really helped her. Like she She was less keen on Star Wars and Empire, but I think having Rey was a sort of an interface for her with the movie, and she absolutely loved it. It was great.
Yeah.
And I've forgotten how good it was. I actually really liked it, but I think I still prefer Ryan's movie.
Yeah. So what did you think of some of like the big, surprises, the big twists? Like obviously so much stock had been put into the idea that Rey's parentage must be something mystical and something larger than life, that she must belong to one of the big bloodlines, be it the Kenobis or the Skywalkers or the Solos. Yeah. What did you think of Ryan's decision to just go, no, you're the son of, you're the daughter of no one in particular?
Well, I mean, I've no insider info in this because I never asked Mark or anyone else I know involved in Star Wars any secrets, because it'd be so uncool to do that,
Yeah.
But my suspicion is that Adam Driver's character is lying, and I am utterly convinced it's his sister. I'm utterly convinced.
That's what I think too, yeah.
Yeah, because I think if there's one guy you're not going to trust his word, it's Kylo Ren.
Absolutely.
It's like, why would you believe this guy, Plus, I just think if they were just nobodies, it just wouldn't have that punch. I think you've got to have the punch in the gut where you think they're nobodies, so that then when you hear, hang on, it's brother versus sister, then the ante is raised in the third movie. That's just my guess as a fan.
Yeah. That's my guess, and it's my hope.
No way it won't be. And funnily enough, when I was watching Force Awakens with the kids at the weekend, there was definitely something, when the way that Han Solo, who kind of hates everybody, warns so quickly to Rey. When I watched it again, I thought, yeah, that's definitely, he knows that's his kid.
Yeah. You see, I'm totally with you there. I'm glad you said that. I have a feeling that we're going to find out in episode 9, written and directed by J.J. Abrams, that they're going to backpedal on that just a tad. And they're going to say that, Kylo was essentially just trying to get into her head and trying to get her over to his side. And then
exactly. I mean, he's deceitful, yeah. So.
Yeah. And then,
he was great, by the way. How great was Adam Driver in that movie? I love Adam Driver.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I think he's very underrated too. I feel like I've seen him in like 4 or 5 different films, and he's a completely different person in each one. He's just very, very talented.
Well, it was funny. I was sitting with all the actors last week when I was watching it, and I was sitting with Frank Oz, who I worship. Right, it's like he's like the nicest guy. He was really funny, just really charming. And I saw him when the Yoda scene came on. He was watching it, kind of leaning forward and really kind of the way all actors are, just hoping it's good and everything. And then Mark was really kind of leaning forward watching that. And I was looking around at Daisy Ridley, and she was, and then I looked around at Adam Driver, and all of his scenes, he was just sitting back thinking, yeah, this is awesome. Like, he knew he was great. It was really, he had this incredible confidence that I've never seen in an actor before. He was just sitting eating Maltesers, sweets we have over here, and he was just sitting eating them, and he was just smiling, and you could tell he knew he'd done a great job.
Yeah. Now, and what about, and then the other big thing is obviously, we lost Han Solo in Force Awakens, and now we've now lost Luke. How did you feel about Luke's passing in the third act of this film?
I've got to say, the one thing that does make me a little bit nervous is these characters going, because we remember how much we love them when we see them again, and it's a hell of a thing to put on the shoulders of all the new characters, because Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, it's like these characters don't come along all the time.
I know.
That was lightning in 3 bottles. That's that's 3 great characters, and Darth Vader as well, and R2 and 3PO. I mean, for all the criticisms that Lucas gets, my God, he created some amazing characters with those actors. It's amazing what he did. And it's really hard to create a cultural phenomenon all over again with new actors, new characters. So it's going to be, I think, no matter how good they are, no matter how good they're made, it's going to be so hard to do these movies, I think, after all those people that we grew up with are gone. It's a bit like, I hope it doesn't feel like, we're stuck around after the party, but so far, I didn't enjoy Rogue One. I didn't really think that was a very good film. So they can put a foot wrong, just like Marvel can put a foot wrong. I mean, Marvel misstep sometimes too, So,
yeah, of course.
But hope, fingers crossed, this all goes well after the next one.
Yeah, I mean, okay, I know you probably can't say this because, you get in trouble. But do you know if Mark is expected back to do some Force Ghost work in episode 9?
Oh man, that's. I would be shot dead if I said that out loud. It's like, weirdly, if it was a company, I would tell you, but when it's a friend, I could never say, But yeah, I mean, that must be the question of the moment right now, isn't it? I mean, that would be the best headline ever if I give the answer.
Because I've got to be perfectly honest. You know, I echo your concerns about what this means now, because, you know, now Han is gone and Luke is gone, and we know, you know, unfortunately because of real life tragedy, you know, Leia is essentially gone. So, you know, I'm really anxious about the fact that they allowed Luke to get killed off in this. And I just feel like, I don't know, maybe this is just selfish of me, but I really wanted more time with Luke. I feel like, similar to you, he was always my favorite. You know, other people have gravitated towards Han Solo because he's sarcastic and he's the cool guy and whatever. I was always a Luke person. So I came into this wanting to get like just a huge fill on him and to really kind of have my mind melted and blown by Luke. And I kind of felt like we didn't get to dig in nearly deeply enough. And now he's gone. You know, I'm worried.
You know what, though? It's so funny because I have this conversation with pals all the time. And I remember as a kid, we all loved Luke, right? When I was 7 and I saw Star Wars, we loved Han. I mean, who doesn't love Han?
Yeah.
But Luke was everybody's hero. And we all bought the toy of Luke before we bought the toy of Han and everything, you know?
Yeah.
But what I think is interesting is people have retconned their own lives to sound cooler. And a lot of my friends now say, oh, yeah, I always loved Han Solo because he's the badass, you know, he's kind of sarcastic. And I was like, no, I remember you loved Luke Skywalker most, you know.
Yeah.
And it's funny, it became so fashionable by the time you hit your teens to prefer Han Solo, didn't it?
Yeah.
That you forget that Luke is the star of those movies. I mean, it starts off with a farm boy who becomes a Jedi Master, you know, so that's the arc of Luke's story is the arc of Star Wars across those 3 movies. And I mean, he does the cool stuff. He blows up the Death Star. He redeems Darth Vader. He does all the cool stuff. He fights Darth Vader in that great scene in the second one, you know, loses his hands. It's like, you know, there's no denying they're his movies, you know. So I think that's why I liked Last Jedi so much, that it felt like the guy this franchise belonged to was back.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. Well, look, Mark, I'm thrilled to the gills that you took the time to chat with me today about all the different things that we covered. I mean, really, we covered a lot of ground in a half hour. So
we're very good at this. We're very good.
So really, thanks for coming on. I hope to have you on again at some point in the future. I hope everyone is keeping a close eye on what Millar World and Netflix are cooking up, because it sounds insanely exciting and ambitious.
Well, I think what's exciting is, like I say, we hit the ground running, you know, so whenever an announcement comes in the new year, it's going to be followed by like 3 other announcements, you know. So, I mean, it's what's happening over there is insane. It's actually nuts, like just how many things we're planning and what the people we're talking to. I think people are going to be so blown away by it, because I did a call last week with all the television and all the film people on one call. And just when I was writing it down, because we were doing a conference call, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't wait to come off the phone and tell my wife, you know. I was like, this is insane. Believe what the plan is here, you know. It's like, I can't wait to share it with everyone.
I mean, and honestly, I know you got to go, but this is a bit of a coup by Netflix getting you, because honestly, just from my perspective, you know, outside of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, I have a very hard time thinking of any comic book writers who've had more of their work adapted into films, who've had more of that crossover from book to, you know, cinema, and now television. Like, you know, so them getting you, I think, is just like it's a steal, you know. So
you know, that's very kind of you to say, you know. But I mean, I'm having a great time. I just really like them. When I walked into the room, Lucy and I walked into the room, you know, just over a year ago when we first started speaking to them. Yeah. And I just instantly felt like these are the people. You know, they were great. Like, everybody was just funny, and you know, they just seemed like people like us. Yeah. And they were really, really smart. They're probably smarter than us, you know, really smart, and had great grand plans. And it just, I thought this is going to be a perfect marriage, and it has. I mean, I've been in the office now for several months, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. And I just got to ask, I keep on extending this, but I'm just so thrilled to have you here. Just in terms of, like, you know, in discussing how the fact that so much of your work inevitably gets, you know, adapted, I'm just curious, by this point, has that affected your writing process when you're developing a book? Like, as you write, are you thinking about, well, this is inevitably going to become a movie or a TV show, so I need to tailor it a certain way?
Do you know, you never do. It's funny, like, whenever people do, I mean, I see pals doing that, and I always think, oh, don't go there, you know, because what you end up with is something that looks like a bad 2-dimensional TV show or movie. Yeah, you know? Yeah. What you've got to do is just do a good comic, try and make the comic good. But what I do now actually is different, because working at Netflix, I'm developing these things as movies and as television shows.
Yeah. So this is the first time.
Netflix, and then I'll do a comic of them. But to be honest, budgets are so good now that there's nothing you can do in a comic that you can't do in a movie or a TV show, and technology is so great. Like you're not limited anymore, which is amazing. It's not like doing the old Hulk TV show or something, but I'd probably be, having him maybe jump through a wall or something like that. Now you can do anything. You can have universes collapsing in one scene of a television show now. It's amazing.
Absolutely true. Wow. All right. Well, Mark, once again, thank you so much for coming on, and I hope to have you on again soon. And hopefully may 2018 be as amazing for you as 2017 was.
Oh, thanks very much. Thank you. And thanks for having me. Thanks for taking the time.